Warning: this show contains truth, sarcasm, and opinions that may offend the fragile, the faithless, and the fact-free. If you still trust the government's math, think DEI is a personality trait, or believe mostly peaceful includes Molotov cocktails. This ain't your safe space. We do real talk, not re-education. We roast hypocrisy, we question the headlines, and we stand unapologetically for faith, freedom, and facts. So grab your coffee, buckle up, and remember, comfort is for the controlled. Courage is for the awake.
The week begins with Washington in chaos, the country divided, and the streets filled with signs that say, "No kings." The government shutdown is entering week 3. Hundreds of thousands furloughed, programs frozen, and the political class pointing fingers instead of fixing problems. Overseas, Trump's calling out Colombia's president for fueling the drug trade, threatening tariffs, and shaking up the global chessboard. And back home, protests erupt across major cities as the No Kings movement claims to stand for democracy. But some scenes look more like anarchy. It's a clash of visions: limited government versus limitless outrage, free markets versus moral ultimatums, and patriotism versus propaganda. Tonight, we break it all down: the shutdown, the tariffs, the protests, and what they reveal about America's crossroads in 2025. This is Data and Dissonance. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Data and Dissonance, where caffeine is a food group and facts are still legal. For now. It's Monday, the shutdown's still dragging on, the streets are full of No King signs, and Twitter looks like a therapy group for people who've never read the Constitution. So let's bring in the crew before Rachel fact-checks my coffee intake. First up, Brian, the man who thinks Red Bull should sponsor the Republican Party. He's back with his MAGA fire energy, ready to burn down bureaucracy faster than CNN can say sources familiar with the matter. How you doing, brother? Still keeping that patriotic blood pressure at boil? Then we've got Rachel, our red pill realist. Half logic, half lightning bolt. She's the only person I know who can roast a narrative and fix your budget spreadsheet in the same sentence. She's probably been fact-checking us since the intro started. Welcome back, truth teller. How's the view from the sanity side of the fence? Next, Daniel, our resident conspiracy cartographer. This guy could find a hidden message in a box of Cheerios. He's probably got string connecting the shutdown, the protests, and a lost shipment of Hunter Biden's laptops. Daniel, you've been quiet, which usually means you found something terrifying. And rounding out the table, Skylar, bringing that progressive pulse and the Green Party sass. She's the reason we now recycle our arguments after each show. Skylar, glad you're here, though I'm still not convinced wind turbines can power this much free speech. So here we are, 1 studio, 4 perspectives, and enough tension to power a Tesla. Buckle up, America, because if this panel doesn't start a debate, it'll start a civil war in the comments section. All right, let's jump right into it. The government shutdown is now officially old enough to buy a drink. Week 3, hundreds of thousands furloughed, the media losing its mind, and the average American saying, "Wait, the government was open before this?" You've got TSA lines crawling, national parks closed, and half of DC pretending to care just long enough to get a camera in their face. The big question tonight: who's really winning? The taxpayers, the politicians, or the people pulling strings behind the scenes? Brian, I'll start with you, because you're usually ready to light this topic up like a 4th of July grill.
Look, Artie, this whole thing is a clown show wrapped in bureaucracy. The swamp creatures are crying about missed paychecks, while the rest of us have been footing the bill for their incompetence for decades. You've got bureaucrats who couldn't manage a lemonade stand running trillion-dollar budgets, and now we're supposed to feel sorry because the gravy train hit a red light? Nah, I say let it burn. Every day this government stays shut down is another day the taxpayers keep a few drops of freedom. Maybe if Congress stopped treating our wallets like a bottomless buffet, we wouldn't be here. But no, they pass spending bills the size of the Bible and read them like they're TikTok captions. The shutdown's not the crisis, it's the symptom of addiction. Addiction to control, spending, and power. And like any addict, DC needs a cold turkey detox.
Preach, brother. Sounds like you're ready to host an intervention on the Capitol steps. Rachel, I saw that eyebrow go up. Hit us with the red pill take before Brian turns this into a bonfire of the bureaucrats.
You're not wrong about the addiction, Brian, but there's a deeper rot here. The shutdown exposes how fragile the system really is. Not because of the money, but because of the dependency. We've built a country where every crisis leads back to the same answer. The government will fix it. That mindset is what's dangerous. When the paychecks stop, when the programs freeze, people panic because they've forgotten how to stand on their own 2 feet. Conservatives talk about limited government, but too many still expect Washington to babysit them. What we're seeing isn't just a political failure, it's a cultural one. The bureaucracy didn't get this bloated overnight, and it's not going away until Americans start realizing freedom means self-reliance, not waiting for a politician to fix your problems.
Amen to that. And I gotta say, Rachel just said more truth in 1 minute than the entire CNN lineup in a month. Daniel, I can feel you vibrating in your chair over there, so go ahead and pull out the red string and tell us what the shutdown's really about.
All right, buckle up, because this one's not about budgets, it's about leverage. The shutdown isn't just some accident of lazy legislators, it's a stress test. Every time the government shuts down, the elites watch how the population reacts, who panics, who protests, who complies. It's behavioral data at scale. Remember 2020? They measured obedience with masks and lockdowns. Now it's compliance through scarcity, limit paychecks, freeze services, and see who'll beg for federal relief. The goal is to normalize crisis management. Once people accept that chaos is constant, they'll accept more surveillance, more control, more executive authority. This isn't about left or right. It's about conditioning. And the more chaos they create, the easier it is to sell control as salvation.
So what you're saying is, the government's not shut down, it's just beta testing tyranny 2.0. Great, now I'll never sleep again. Skylar, save us from Daniel's doomsday. What's your take?
You guys sound like you're auditioning for a Netflix docu-series. Look, this shutdown isn't some deep state psyop, and it's not a patriotic detox. It's dysfunction. Plain and simple. You can't keep a country running when both sides treat compromise like a 4-letter word. Federal workers aren't elites. They're single parents, veterans, teachers, air traffic controllers. Real people, real families, and every day this goes on, they're the ones paying the price while politicians collect their paychecks. The shutdown isn't a lesson in freedom. It's proof of failure. Maybe if our so-called leaders stopped grandstanding for sound bites and started governing like adults, we wouldn't be here every other year watching the same political rerun.
And there's our Skylar, turning dysfunction into empathy with a side of idealism. I'll give you credit, though. You're not wrong that both parties love the spotlight more than solutions. But let's be real. This shutdown has exposed what many of us already knew. DC doesn't serve the people. It serves itself. At the end of the day, it's not just about who gets a paycheck, it's about who gets the power. And every minute this government stays shut down, we see the mask slip a little more. Maybe that's what scares them, that Americans might realize how little we actually need them. So while DC is shut down and the bureaucrats are crying over their missed cafeteria lunches, President Trump apparently decided he's not sitting around waiting for Congress. He's turning his attention south, straight at Colombia. Over the weekend, Trump called Colombia's President Gustavo Petro a drug lord in a suit and hinted at slapping tariffs so heavy they'd make Pablo Escobar pay customs. He says Petro's government is flooding our streets with cocaine while cashing in on U.S. aid. It's vintage Trump, direct, brutal, and guaranteed to send every newsroom from D.C. to Bogota into panic mode. The question tonight, is this bold leadership or international chaos with subtitles? Brian, I'm starting with you because I can already see the MAGA fire smoke coming out of your headset.
Artie, this is the kind of spine the rest of the world forgot we had. For 4 years under Trump 2.0, America's finally acting like the alpha again. You deal drugs, you deal with tariffs. Simple. The globalists can cry about diplomatic tone, but tone doesn't stop fentanyl, and soft-spoken foreign policy got us 2 decades of open borders and overdoses. You can't reason with corruption, you punish it. Trump's message is crystal. If you want U.S. money, clean up your own mess first. It's the same common-sense logic every parent uses. You don't give your kid more allowance when they're sneaking beer out of the fridge. The left calls it reckless. I call it leadership with a backbone.
Spoken like a man who'd put tariffs on TikTok if he could. Rachel, you're the balance beam between logic and chaos. What's your read? Is this strong foreign policy or a little too much art of the war instead of art of the deal?
Honestly, Artie, it's both. Trump's strategy works because it's bold, but it's risky because it's impulsive. Tariffs can be leverage, sure, but they can also backfire if they alienate an ally who helps fight the very problem you're accusing them of. Colombia's messy? No question. But it's also one of the few countries still cooperating on anti-narcotics operations. This is classic Trump. Moral outrage meets negotiating tactic. He forces everyone to the table by blowing it up first. And while that can reset power dynamics, it also creates uncertainty in markets and alliances. Conservatives love the tough talk, but we've got to be honest. Strength isn't just volume, it's precision. You can't shout America first so loud that you drown out the part about America smart.
That's fair. Diplomacy with decibels only works if the mic's pointed the right way. Daniel, I know you've already got a map of trade routes, drug tunnels, and campaign donations in your head. Go on, crack it open.
Oh, it's deeper than tariffs, my dude. Colombia's just the headline. The real story is the global banking network behind the drug trade. The same institutions screaming about Trump's recklessness are laundering billions in narco money through international finance hubs. Every time a US president threatens to close that tap, the world panics. Why? Because corruption funds the system. Petro's cozy with socialist regimes. Trump calling him out isn't random. It's a warning shot to everyone playing both sides. The tariff threat is the cover story for a financial squeeze, forcing dirty money into the open. Remember, follow the funding, not the hashtags. When global markets start twitching after one speech, it means the right people felt the hit.
So in Daniel's world, every customs fee is a coded message to the Illuminati's accountant. All right, Skylar, jump in. Save the liberals from spontaneous combustion.
You guys are unbelievable. Trump goes on another international insult spree, and you call it strategy. This isn't diplomacy, it's chaos with a passport. You can't bully an ally on Twitter and expect cooperation on Tuesday. These kinds of outbursts rattle markets, tank exports, and hurt small American farmers more than any cartel. Tariffs sound tough until your local produce prices triple. And let's not forget, calling foreign leaders names on social media isn't strength, it's ego. We used to have diplomacy built on respect. Now it's built on retweets. America's image matters, and every reckless comment chips away at whatever credibility we had left with the rest of the world.
Fair point. But in fairness, credibility doesn't pay the bills. Trade does. And if Colombia is cashing US checks while exporting chaos, somebody's got to say it out loud. The difference is, Trump's the only one who actually does. Here's the thing. The world's gotten used to America whispering. Trump's not whispering. He's roaring. And whether you love it or hate it, people listen. The danger is what comes after the roar. Does it push nations into reform or rebellion? Only time and trade numbers will tell. So while Washington's shut down and the media's foaming at the mouth, the streets have turned into one giant therapy session for America's resistance crowd. Over the weekend, more than 2,000 No Kings protests popped up across the country, from Portland to Pittsburgh, all chanting about saving democracy while blocking traffic, screaming into cameras, and in some cases, stealing iPhones to tweet about oppression. It's a movement supposedly built on freedom, Yet half the signs were printed by the same 3 activist groups funded by billionaire donors who haven't done a day of real work since MySpace was cool. So here's the question. Is this a genuine cry for democracy, or just the latest meltdown from the professional protest class? Brian, I'll start with you because I can already see that MAGA grin forming like it's Christmas morning at a gun show.
Oh, it's beyond a meltdown, Artie. This is the Olympics of delusion. You've got thousands of people waving no king signs while begging government to control their lives. You can't make this stuff up. The same folks who screamed, "Not my president," for 8 years are now marching because they lost again. And this time, the tantrums nationwide. Half of these kids couldn't name a founding father if you spotted them George. They want democracy, but only if it means their side wins every time. And the hypocrisy? Off the charts. They're out there chanting, "Power to the people," while live streaming on phones made by slave labor in China. This isn't resistance. It's performance art with bad hygiene. You want freedom? Get a job, pay your taxes, and quit pretending your hashtag is a revolution.
Brian, buddy, if sarcasm were gasoline, you'd power the National Guard. Rachel, I saw you shake your head at least twice during that rant, so hit us with the red pill. Are these protests pure chaos, or is there a kernel of truth hiding under the theatrics?
I'll give them this. At least they're engaged. We've spent years complaining that Americans don't care, and now they're in the streets. But the problem is what they're fighting for. No king sounds noble, but ask 10 protesters what it means, and you'll get 10 different answers. Everything from end fascism to cancel my student loans. The messaging's all over the place because outrage is easier than understanding. And here's the uncomfortable truth. These movements thrive because people feel unheard. When institutions stop listening, emotion takes over. So yeah, the screaming looks ridiculous, but underneath it is frustration that spans across political lines. The right does it with trucker convoys, the left does it with marches. Different costumes, same message. We're tired of being ruled by elites who treat us like background noise. The difference is, conservatives usually clean up after themselves when it's over.
A rare moment of bipartisan cleanup acknowledgement. Mark your calendars. Daniel, I can already feel the conspiracy radar pinging. So go ahead, my friend. Who's actually pulling the strings behind the No Kings curtain?
Glad you asked, because this whole movement's about as grassroots as AstroTurf. You've got spontaneous protests in 50 states that all happen to get permits, media coverage, and identical signage within 48 hours. Yeah, totally organic. This is coordinated chaos. Follow the money, and you'll find the same activist foundations, think tank NGOs, and campaign consultants laundering outrage into influence. The No Kings slogan? That's focus grouped. It's psychological judo. Paint Trump as the tyrant, position their donors as defenders of democracy, and keep the chaos hot until the next election cycle. It's not about justice, it's about control through emotion. The more divided the country gets, the more funding these groups receive. And the kicker? The same media networks covering the protests are invested in the corporations funding them. It's a snake eating its own tail, and it's wearing a protest badge.
You've got a gift, Daniel. You could make Sesame Street sound like a spy novel. Skylar, bring it home for the other side. I'm guessing you see these protests a little differently than our tinfoil task force here.
You bet I do, Artie. Look, not everyone out there is a paid protester or part of some global puppet show. A lot of these people are scared. Really scared? Of losing rights, losing stability, losing any sense that their voice matters. You don't have to agree with them to understand the anxiety fueling it. Protests are how democracy breathes. And while, yes, some folks out there are performative, most are just desperate to be heard in a system that feels rigged for the powerful. Every side has its extremists. You've got your fringe conspiracy groups. The left's got its keyboard crusaders. But at least these people showed up. They're using the tools of democracy to push back, and even if you don't like their message, their right to shout it is exactly what freedom's about.
And that, folks, is why we keep Skylar around. Equal parts conviction, compassion, and caffeine. I'll give her credit. If more people protested peacefully and less people looted ironically, we might actually get somewhere as a nation. At the end of the day, whether it's No Kings, Iamaga, or Leave Me Alone, what we're really seeing is America yelling at itself, trying to figure out who's in charge and who's fed up. The left shouts about tyranny, the right shouts about freedom, and somewhere in between, the rest of us are just trying to afford groceries and not lose our minds. Protest is patriotic, but it's also personal responsibility. March all you want, but if you don't vote, don't build, don't learn, you're just adding noise to the echo chamber. Democracy isn't about crowns or kings, it's about courage. All right, before we jump into final thoughts, it's time to talk about something every American needs right now. Caffeine, common sense, and a little red, white, and blue drip in their morning cup. That's right. The Data and Dissonance merch drop is live and hotter than Brian's blood pressure during a CNN segment. We've got the High Lakes Light Roast for those mornings when you still believe in optimism, the Rock Creek Medium Roast for the everyday grinders, and the Bitterroot Dark Roast for the patriots who like their coffee like their humor. Dark, bold, and occasionally offensive. Each blend's roasted right here in the USA, packed fresh and shipped faster than Congress can say recess. 12-ounce bags, whole bean or ground. Your choice. Because unlike DC, we still believe in freedom of selection. And while you're there, check out the new merch line. The Data over Dissonance tees. Gen X built different raised right hoodies, and the best-selling I identify as non-binary bumper stickers. Perfect for coffee tables, tailgates, and triggering Prius drivers in traffic. Head over to dataanddissonance.printify.me. Again, that's dataanddissonance.printify.me. And use promo code DD1025 for free shipping this week only. Remember, every purchase keeps this show independent, uncensored, and fully caffeinated. Because freedom's expensive, but coffee's cheaper than socialism. All right, folks, what a ride tonight. From the government shutdown circus to Trump taking the global gloves off, and now protesters screaming "No Kings" while live streaming on Chinese-made phones. It's been a full serving of American irony. But that's where we live now. A world where outrage pays better than honesty, and the loudest voices think volume equals virtue. So before we call it a night, let's each drop our final thoughts. What this week really means for America, and where we go from here. Brian, I'll start with you. You've been fired up all show, so go ahead and torch the last few brain cells of anyone still defending this madness.
You got it, brother. Look, I don't care what the media says. This country's not broken. It's just being held hostage by people who profit from pretending it is. The shutdown isn't the end of the world. It's proof that we've given too much power to people who can't handle it. Every agency that's suffering is one that's bloated anyway. Trump's calling out foreign corruption? Good. Someone needs to. And these No Kings protests? Please. The only crowns those kids wear are from Burger King. The real America isn't out there burning flags and crying about oppression. It's the men and women getting up every day, working, praying, and taking care of their families while DC plays political monopoly. You want to fix America? Fire half of Washington, fund the military and the border, and put God back in the classroom. That's not radical, that's reality.
That's about as subtle as a bald eagle with brass knuckles, and I love it. Rachel, bring us back to the balance beam before Brian starts an impeachment petition live on air.
It's funny, Artie. Every time the system breaks down, we act shocked. But what we're seeing isn't collapse, it's clarity. The shutdown, the protests, the tariffs, they all peel back the curtain and show us exactly what our priorities are. We've replaced accountability with entertainment and outrage with participation. The truth is, both sides have gotten too comfortable blaming each other instead of demanding results. Democracy isn't dying. It's being neglected. You can't have a government of the people when most people only show up to argue online. So yes, hold the elites accountable, but also hold yourself accountable for what you read, what you vote for, and what you tolerate. That's how we rebuild trust. Not with slogans, but with standards.
You always drop truth bombs like it's therapy for the Republic. Daniel, I see you nodding like a man who's about to say something that'll make me check my firewall. Go ahead, brother.
You should, man. Because this week's just more proof the puppet masters never sleep. Look at the pattern. Crisis, chaos, control. Every shutdown, every tariff threat, every protest, they all feed the same machine. Fear makes people compliant, and compliant people are easier to govern. You think it's coincidence that the biggest tech and finance players always seem to benefit when the government stalls? Nah, they plan for it. The trick isn't to destroy the system, it's to wake up inside it. Start questioning everything, from who funds your news to who profits from your fear. Because until people start thinking critically again, we'll keep trading freedom for comfort. And that's a deal no free nation survives for long.
I'd say that's paranoid, but after this year, paranoia is starting to sound like a survival skill. Skylar, last word before I close us out. What's your takeaway tonight?
Honestly, Artie, for all our disagreements, I think we actually want the same thing. A country that works again. You can't fix anything if people stop caring. These protests, even if messy, are proof people still care enough to show up. The shutdown shows what happens when leaders forget who they serve. And Trump's tough talk on trade, while controversial, at least puts issues like corruption and accountability back on the table. We just have to find a way to fight without destroying each other in the process. It's easy to mock, easier to rage, but hardest to listen. Maybe that's where we start. Listening. Not to agree, but to understand why everyone's so damn angry in the first place. If we can do that, maybe there's still hope for the Republic.
See, that's the thing I love about this crew. We fight, we disagree, we roast each other into oblivion. But at the end of the day, we're all trying to pull this country in the same direction, forward. America's having an identity crisis, and maybe it needs one. For too long, we've let politicians, pundits, and algorithms tell us who to hate, who to trust, and what to fear. But somewhere between the shouting and the shutdowns, there's still a heartbeat. The one that built this nation from scratch. We are not the chaos they sell us. We are not the hashtags or the headlines. We're the people who get up every day, raise our kids, pay our bills, and try to leave something better behind. So yeah, the government's broken, the protests are loud, and the world's on edge. But that doesn't mean we give up. It means we wake up. And as long as this mic's hot and your minds are open, we'll keep cutting through the noise one truth at a time. Remember to speak truth, stir thought, and never apologize for thinking freely. I'm Artie J. Roy III, and this has been Data and Dissonance. Stay strong, stay caffeinated, and we'll see you tomorrow at 5 p.m. Tonight's episode of Data and Dissonance is brought to you by the Caleb Rourke Thriller series. Stories written for those who still believe truth is worth fighting for. In the Covenant Protocol, one man discovers a classified network designed to silence dissent and decides to fight back. In the Prophet Directive, that same war goes global as faith, freedom, and power collide in a battle for the future of humanity. And this winter, the fight continues in Black Echo Rising, where the shadows aren't hiding secrets. They're hunting the truth. These books don't just tell a story. They hold a mirror to the world we're living in right now. Patriotism, sacrifice, espionage, and redemption, all woven into a world that feels a little too close to reality. Get your copies on Amazon or Books too. Read and remember, every purchase keeps this mission alive. Independent, unfiltered, and uncensored. The Caleb Rourke Thriller series, where freedom has a price and silence isn't an option. All right, folks, that's it for tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. Mountain. Same crew, same chaos, same unapologetic truth. Until then, keep your coffee strong, your mind sharper, and your flag flying high. Good night, America.